Welcome to the weekend. My name is Brian, and you are in the One Up Club, right here at the One Up Club Podcast Network. Listen, E3, literally days away, E3 2018, and we figured what better time to jump in the club than right now. So we can discuss the big three, Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, figure out what it is that they have to do at E3 to make this show a resounding success. Now, in order to do that, I kind of need my co-host because there's a lot to cover in a short amount of time, and who just wants to hear only my opinion? The answer is nobody. So, without further ado, I would like to present to you, the audience, our beloved audience, the co-host, or the host, rather, of the Johnny Good Times Fun Factory, as well as the owner-proprietor of GameBlock.com. It is my good friend, Ryan Hamner. What's going on, Ryan?
Nothing, man. How you doing?
Oh, doing fantastic, even though this is the second go-around. But hey, who's counting, right?
Yeah.
Ryan, E3 2018, if we look back at 2017 and kind of get a feel for what happened last year, kind of a disappointment. I think you could say not a lot shown, the things that were shown. Literally everything has been pushed back basically to 2019 at this point. What are your expectations for this year? Are we going to have a better show than we did in previous years past? Because past couple of years have been kind of unmemorable, I guess you could say.
Yeah, social media has kind of ruined these type of shows. We used to have to wait for E3 to get any kind of news. Oh, Metal Gear Solid 4, what's it going to be like? Well, today we know what these games have been like. We've seen screenshots leaked. We've seen videos. We've got journalists have unparalleled access to these games beforehand. So, it's really taken a lot of pop out of these shows. And it's not the extravaganza it once was like a decade ago.
Yeah, and if you actually look, Colin Moriarty yesterday on Twitter said basically that E3 is kind of antiquated at this point, given all of the things that you actually said. And I tend to agree with that. With all of the instant information that we're getting about these games before they come out, you got data miners out there. You've got people just basically leaking all the information. It almost does make a huge impact on really what we want out of E3. Even Sony this week saying, you know what, the E3 show is great, but we're going to be giving you information ahead of time anyway, because it's not like you're already getting it. But Ryan, just looking at the future prospects of Microsoft specifically, we'll go into that. Microsoft, in order to succeed this year, I feel like they have to really focus less on hardware, although their temptation is always to focus on the hardware and really get into the titles. They've got billions of dollars. They're worth something like $0.4 trillion or something like that, 440 billion, I think. And they can buy Mojang without even thinking about it. They went out and got GitHub this past week. They don't have the people to make the games that are actually attracting to the hardware, which is by far superior, whether anybody cares to admit it on the Sony side or not. But just looking at that aspect, and they need to bring the titles in. Crackdown 3 yesterday announced that they're not going to be out until 2019. That is a huge hit because Crackdown 3, there's a lot of people who have been waiting for that game. And I honestly think it would move a lot of machines given how ambitious that project is. My thoughts on that are if they don't get the titles, they're just going to see another down year. It will not be a success no matter what they bring out. They could bring out the HoloLens fully functional. If they don't have the titles for it or they only have Minecraft to show, they're basically doomed because Master Chief can only take you so far.
Yeah, it says a lot that their biggest title, I think, could be considered to be Forza. It's the one that gets the most accolades. You just mentioned the Halo series. Obviously, that is huge. But it seems like the only title they can consistently put out that is theirs exclusively is Forza. And I'm sorry, racing, I love playing racing games, but it is a very niche genre. Not everybody is into that stuff. unless you're talking about something kind of silly like Mario Kart. Microsoft, you've got to find a way to do better. You've got to find your Uncharted. You've got to find your Detroit Become Human. That's what sells. The hardware is amazing. I wish Microsoft would give me a reason to buy an Xbox One X, but Sea of Thieves is not enough to do it. You got to give me something better.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I brought up last night in a text conversation with you is everybody clamors constantly for the past decade for a Half-Life 3. You've got Valve, which utilizes so much of the internet, and with all the connectivity and everything that Microsoft uses, why isn't Microsoft looking at Valve? And one of the things that you had said, right, and I believe correctly, what benefit would Valve have to selling to Microsoft? And the only benefit that I can really think of for Valve to do that is the $7.5 billion that they just gave GitHub. When you look at that, they literally can't make the game. They need something to make Microsoft and the Xbox One stand out. Xbox One X is clearly the superior machine when you look at the PS4 Pro. And I know that hurts people who love Sony. I know that hurts their feelings. I am a PlayStation 4 owner. I do not have an Xbox One. It hurts my feelings. Because I look at that machine and I think, man, how great is this thing? And then you look at the library and it's the only thing holding you back, like anybody back, from buying that thing. Because when you get the promises of games like Recore or Sea of Thieves or whatever, and they just don't meet those expectations, you're left not buying that machine based on that. Valve has something that people want, whether it's Portal and a Portal 3, like you said yesterday, a Portal 3 game would sell so many machines. Half-Life 3 would sell so many machines. They would be able to basically have their thumb over top of the Steam engine. All this cross-platform gaming, literally Microsoft would be in the center of it all. With the Xbox, with Steam, with all of it. If they were able to get a hold of Valve in some way, shape, or form. Your thoughts?
Well, you mentioned Portal 3 a couple of minutes ago. I never played Half-Life 2, so I'm not really pining for that particular game as much as others did. But Portal series is one of my favorites. I've played 1 and 2 multiple times. My kid absolutely loves watching me play that. We would buy an Xbox One X or whatever it would be called at that point if this acquisition was to happen and they were to make a Portal 3 game. Love that series. It would be a huge move. And then you mentioned the Steam stuff in addition to that. I mean, to have access to that library, I mean, Sony would be shaking in their shoes if this was to go down.
They really would. And using that as a platform to jump to Sony, I actually did a show the other day where I talked about some of the things that I would like to see Sony actually do. And one of the things I did leave out was that cross-platform gameplay, because they've been really resistant to it, which literally makes zero sense to me. But looking at Sony and their E3 presentation, what do you need to see for them in order to consider their show a success?
Well, for me, I guess I don't think I need to see any more of Death Stranding. I don't need to see any more Spider-Man. I'm already going to buy those games. I don't need Red Dead Redemption if they have something worked out there. I've already pre-ordered that stuff. Show me more. Do exactly what you did last year when you showed us Days Gone and stuff like that. I think Spider-Man debuted last year. Give us fresh content. Your games are your strength. Play to your strength. And then you got to close this show off with PlayStation 5 announcement. You've got to catch up on the hardware. You've got to do better than 4.5.
And it's really funny because I look at them and I think their games are pretty much on par, but they do run the risk of becoming complacent with that. One of our mutual friends, Jimmy, Old School Hill, formerly on Twitter, who's taken Twitter absence, and I'm sort of jealous of that. He actually said part of the problems that he sees with Sony is it seems like a lot of the games are starting to feel similar to each other. Even with the God of War game, as good as it was, just looking at it, it almost feels like it's gotten away from the God of War uh, formula. I guess you could say they really changed direction on that. And while it's not necessarily a bad thing, when every game is either going to that same feel, or you end up every game's got to have a freaking battle royal now, um, it becomes kind of an issue. Because basically you're going to say, well, which type of game do you want to play? And that might make Microsoft actually more appealing if they've got more of a variety. I think we're pretty far away from that happening, but there is the risk of complacency with the games. For me, it's all about the hardware in this E3 show. The PlayStation 4 is, I mean, this generation is getting older. It's about time for them to start rolling out the new stuff. Xbox, I believe, actually took care of that by releasing the X because it's so far ahead of the consoles that are basically there. PlayStation 4 Pro just feels like it's a panic design, a design where they just said, oh shit, what is Microsoft doing? We got to do something. And so they threw out that 4K UHD, and that's all they could muster with it. I'm sure the tech geeks will tell me that I'm wrong, and that's fine. I'm perfectly okay with being wrong. I am not the internet. But when you look at, yeah, hold on. I can't reach it. The DualShock 4, literally my least favorite controller in decades. I hate it. It feels flimsy. It feels like I'm going to snap it in half. They wear out. The batteries run like dead entirely too quick. The thing that I want, I'm so jealous of Xbox users and that Elite controller. Just having the triggers underneath, because the way I've always held my controller is just different. I struggle doing the two on the top. I always have one down and I've got the single, which makes me absolutely suck at all games. And everybody will say, well, that sounds like you problem. And it is. But I want the option to actually do that. I want them to change that. You look, and I really honestly believe that Sony is too much of a follower when it comes to many of the innovations that they come up with. Like, I suspect that if they introduce the PlayStation 5, which I'm calling as the PSV, I strongly suspect that they'll do what Nintendo's doing with the Switch, with a portable screen or some sort of a Vita 2 that goes along with it, because Nintendo did it first. You look at half of the things that are in the operating system of the PlayStation current, and they come from Microsoft. They made fun of Microsoft whenever they revealed the X for the Kinect and for saying that they were going to have DVR capabilities and TV streaming and things like that. And what do? Within months, they roll out plans for PlayStation View, and everybody then jumps on board. They've got the PlayStation Camera, which is exactly what the Kinect is, but smaller and cheaper. And everybody cheers that. PlayStation VR, fine, but they're not offering it enough support either. At least the developers aren't. So when it comes down to it, that's what I need to see from them. I need to see them actually go in and bring the hardware up to date, specifically that DualShock controller.
Yeah, we have a difference of opinion on the DualShock. I think it sucks as well. You don't like the ergonomics of it. I just cannot stand that I break the R2 button after like 6 months. Consistently within the first year, the internal parts of that crack off. It's a problem they have never once fixed. I bought a controller about a year ago. Same thing. We're now 4 years into the life cycle of the DualShock 4. How has that not gotten fixed? You search it on the internet. Everybody has this problem. Fix the damn thing. These things are $60 a piece. You're adding, you pointed out to Josh Poitras on Twitter the other day, that adds like another $200-300 onto the cost of the console. That's unacceptable. I mean, it's one thing to have a controller that fits better. At the very basic level, these things should last longer than a year. It sucks.
Yeah, and it's the whole concept in manufacturing of planned lifespans. They know they can make money off of it. And what does a PlayStation controller actually cost to make in materials and labor? $12? So they're making $48, $38, $48 each time that happens. And you look at the number of PlayStation owners out there, and they're not the only ones to do it, and I get that, but the frequency with which it happens is just entirely too high. Having brought up Nintendo, looking at what they've got, news broke this week, Ryan, that the Nintendo Switch has actually overtaken the Microsoft Xbox One in the UK in terms of market share over there, which is incredible, seeing as how little time it's spent in the market compared to the Xbox One. That's a good trend for them. It's a promising trend for them. And Nintendo, I think no matter what, you look at their IPs and everything is great. They've got the best, strongest IP lineup in the history of video games over the past, 30 years? And you look at that, and then you take what they've done with the Switch. They've really innovated the game, changed it, as they have done in the past, whether it's an analog controller with the N64 or the motion controls with the Wii. They have a history of doing things that innovate and change how we view gaming. And when coupled with the IPs, it's just good for them. The one thing that they need to do to make this year a success is continue the trend of bringing in third-party developers to put games on that system. They're supposedly announcing Fortnite, which will be a huge deal. Everybody seems to love Fortnite. I suck at it, so I like it, but I'm not that good at it. But then you look at Bethesda's already jumped in there with Doom. You need all these companies to start bringing these games in. Make it a viable option, not only for the kids who want to play Mario Kart, who want to play Smash Brothers, adults who want to play Smash Brothers, but also for the adults who want to play those other games that maybe they wouldn't get an opportunity to because, I don't know, we're married and our wives don't necessarily like sinking money into multiple systems. Just me, maybe. But Ryan, when you look at Nintendo, is there anything beyond that third-party support that you feel that they need to do to really have a successful E3?
Well, they just have to keep on keeping on. Like you mentioned a couple minutes ago, Brian, it's all about the IPs for that. Everybody knows who Mario is. Everybody knows who the Legend of Zelda is. My dad could pick Mario out of a lineup, and he's never held a game controller his entire life. The one thing that I want to see them do, I'd love to see the next iteration of the Classic series, which would be what, the N64 Classic? Because we bought the NES Classic, we've got the SNES Classic. Those things are licensed to print money. Keep doing that. Get that, kind of hit that retro market. They're systems that adults, people our age that grew up with these games enjoy, plus our kids. We can play them together. It's kind of like bridging the two generations. So I would love to see, that would have GoldenEye on it. So that alone right there is a purchase for me. So keep up with that and just keep on doing what you do. You've got Smash Brothers on the docket this year. Metroid Prime 4, I think, is being discussed. I don't know if that's been announced, but that's got to be in the near future. Go with what works, like we said for Microsoft and Sony. Play to your strengths. And Nintendo's strength, of course, is their intellectual properties.
It really is. And like you said, they hit a real solid note. With the NES Classic and the Super Nintendo Classic. And it's kind of funny because for years we've been seeing this little knockoff emulator style of throwbacks like the Genesis and like the old Atari, whatever, 7200 or whatever. And now, given the success of those two consoles that Nintendo did, making it strictly just as nostalgic as humanly possible. You're seeing Atari coming out with a VCS, which is an interesting concept. How well it's going to sell, I don't know, because I think that Nintendo and the NES itself and the Super NES directly after really led to a rebirth in that industry. And I don't know how many people age back to the Atari. So I'll be watching that one closely because I find it to be interesting. But things like PS1 and Dreamcast even, I would love to see like a little Dreamcast. It would be a fantastic thing. And given how much data we can cram into small amount of space today versus back then. It's all conceivable, and it's such a big deal. And it's one of the things why I don't understand why Sony hasn't embraced the backwards compatibility, because there's a huge market for retro gaming. Jimmy and I talking last night about how all these games that are online, the Fortnites and things like that, they're not going to be able to have really a retro period of time 20 years from now, because there will be no servers for them. And these companies like to protect their properties so tightly that even if an independent company comes out and sets up a server, they go to shut them down immediately because they're not making money off of it. And it's sad. It's if you were to look on my shelf right now, you'd see games from NES and Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo and Dreamcast and PlayStation 1 and all of these games. I look at those and I say, I don't need anything to play those games. I have the machine. I have the software. I can do it. Games today, you need so much more than just the disc. It's upsetting to me as a retro gamer to know that future is what awaits. But Nintendo fully embracing those IPs and doing all that is just fantastic, and it's fun. And I just want them to succeed. I want them to succeed, because as much as I despise Nintendo for taking and dumping on their fans when it comes to doing what fans do, which is embracing and taking those properties and owning them in projects of their own, Nintendo hits somewhere in virtually every gamer. All those IPs mean something to pretty much everybody. So I would like for them to embrace those the third parties, and get the third parties to embrace them, so that I can continue until my age-old years where my hair is all gray and not just some of it, and I still have those characters that I love with me at that time. So Ryan, is there anything else that you would like to see come out at E3, whether it's from the big three, whether it's from specific developers, or anything else that would really make this show actually pop for you?
Well, for me, it's not necessarily something I'm excited about, but I'm looking forward to seeing what exactly Sony does with the PlayStation VR. Because, Brian, when was the last time you were excited about PlayStation VR?
Well, I don't really have one, so I couldn't tell you.
You know, we're
the ones who dumped on it early and kind of never really came around to it, but now I really want one, and I won't have a job in a couple weeks, so there goes that option.
As a day one adopter, I got it at launch, and it got off to that red hot start. You had Drive Club VR, you had the Batman game, you had the roller coaster ride based on that one game. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but it looked like this was going to be the piece of Sony hardware outside of the console that was really going to be a big hit. We'd already seen the Vita flop. The Move went the same way. It's the same old story with Sony. Nobody backed it up. We don't get any new games for it. We had that great Battlefront 1 where we were in the X-Wing and stuff right before Rogue One came out, and I'm like, here we go. This is what I've been waiting for. This is why I bought my VR headset. Nothing. Absolutely nothing since then. Gollum, the big game that they were talking about at launch. This was going to be the marquee cornerstone software for the VR. Still in development. We're still waiting. We haven't gotten any kind of update. No release date. What the hell are you guys doing? What did I buy this thing for? You got me again.
Yeah, and it almost feels like that happens entirely too much. And it sucks because you don't want to feel like you've been got, as it were. I'm kind of in the same boat when it comes to actual games. Like, you've got specific things that you want. I'm more of a general type person. Like, I want a game that surprises me. A game that makes me feel like I never saw this coming, and I really want this. A game like Cuphead, a game like Rocket League, those type of games, even though they're smaller, surprised me, made me want them. Games like Detroit Become Human, whenever it first came on the scene, Horizon Zero Dawn was the same way. I want that thing that is different from what we've seen, even if just slightly, but excites me. that brings me into it. And I know that's extremely vague, but there's only so many times you can see Call of Duty and still be excited. You can't see Madden every year, FIFA. You can't see Plants vs. Zombies, for Christ's sake. And I don't mean to pick specifically on EA, but it's easy to do that because they basically present the same games over and over and over again. But I want that thing that pops out at me and says, hi, I'm different and you will enjoy me. Please play me.
Well,
It
Brian,
doesn't happen often enough.
I do think we're going to get that this year, and this is based on an article you sent me a couple weeks ago. I think that title is going to be Dreams, the title that Media Molecule has been working on for a couple of years. You know, it sounds more like a creative expression tool than an actual game. But that's probably the individual title that I'm most excited about at this year's E3. You know, I mentioned earlier I don't need to see any more Death Stranding. Show me more of that. That's something that conceptually I've never even like contemplated being on a home console. So I'm really excited to see Dreams.
Yeah, that actually looks really good. It just looks interesting. And that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. Something that is different, that doesn't fit into a mold that we are presented with on a yearly basis. What I don't want to see, like you said earlier, Death Stranding. I don't want to see Final Fantasy VII. I don't want to see anything involving Final Fantasy VII until it's ready to be released. I don't. It's becoming another example of The Last Guardian. I'm so sick of that. I'm so sick of being presented with things that they say, it's coming, and 7 years later, they're giving us the same line, it's coming, and you're not seeing it. I just despise that, because what you end up with is The Last Guardian that looks like a PlayStation 2 game on the PlayStation 4, and I'm not interested in that. I don't want to feel excited to only have that taken away. So as long as they don't have that, I'll be happy.
And I think for titles like, you mentioned Final Fantasy, I would say this applies for Fallout and Skyrim, the Bethesda titles as well. E3 to me needs to be more than a release date announcement. You know, hey, we're working on this. We're doing more Skyrim. It's been a couple years since you guys played the last Elder Scrolls game. Here's the next one. You know, release date 2019. I need to be shown more than that. I want this to be more of a extravaganza. Like, here's something totally different. I just don't want release dates. You know, I can figure that stuff out. I mean, games like, if you're a fan of the Fallout franchise, you really don't need E3 to sell you on the Fallout franchise. No matter what they do with it, you're going to buy it. Same goes with Skyrim. Call of Duty, you mentioned a little while ago. Just do something more with this opportunity to generate some excitement in the video game industry. And like you pointed out a couple of minutes ago, Brian, the best way to do that is show us something we've never seen before. Some companies are really good at doing that. Some absolutely suck. Looking at UEA.
It really is the truth. And that's all we ask. I think as gamers, that's all we ask. And I know there are some people who like spoilers no matter what the industry. And I hate to say it, but you're wrong. Because that pulls a lot of the excitement away. It makes watching these shows pointless. No matter who's presenting what, it makes it almost pointless. But with that being said, we're actually going to call this a show. E3 starts Saturday. Moves on to that. If you'd like to get a hold of Ryan, find him on Twitter at Ryhamner. That's RYHAMNER, which will also be in the graphics at the bottom of the screen for the video people. And at GameBlock.com. Don't forget the hyphen, game-block.com. Be sure to check out his podcast as well, the Johnny Good Times Fun Factory, on the One Up Club Podcast Network. To find me, all you got to do is jump on Twitter at TunesBrian, TOONSBRIN, as well on the graphics on the bottom of the screen. Also, we're expanding a little bit into Reddit, where you can follow the show on Reddit at One-Up Club. So be sure to do that. If you'd like to ask us a question or present anything for a show, you can email us at theoneupclub@gmail.com. And also, be sure to check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/official One Up Club. But that's going to be it for Ryan and myself. Thank you very much for watching and or listening and or both. And we will catch you this weekend as we cover some of the stuff that happened at E3. Take care, and we will see you then.